Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, and congratulations for getting yourselves online. I appreciate your time this afternoon and hope that you gained something from this webinar. This is unpacking the new secondary arts course descriptions for instruction and assessment, and it is provided to you by the Florida Alliance for Arts Education in collaboration, of course, with the Florida Department of Education. And I'm going to take just a minute here to shrink my controls so that I can get to what I need to get to. And let's get on with our work. We're going to, of course, we're looking at launching the secondary and the elementary arts course descriptions this year. They were optional last year. They have been approved by the State Board of Education, and they are a go this year. So let's unpack them and take a look at what's going to happen. We do invite you to talk back to us, as it were. We do want to hear from you, and there is a chat room, as it were, a chat window down near the bottom of your control panel, and you'll be able to submit your questions or submit comments. You can suggest examples, or you can add your applause down there as well. And you can do that anytime throughout the webinar. We'll try to keep up with you, and Gary Ringler is in the background, and he will be our host for the questions to share near the end of the session today. So he's more than capable of keeping up with you, and will track all of that for me. So today's plan looks like this. We're going to do a real quick step through a review of the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards for the Arts. We're also going to take a look at the Common Core standards, and it's all really quite manageable. We're going to take a look mostly at how they code them. Rather than looking at all of the standards, we'll take a look at the standards, the strands, and the codings so that you can be a little bit more comfortable. We'll take a brief viewing of the assessment procedure that's underway and get a little sense of proportion for how that's working. And then we'll take a look at the course descriptions themselves and take a little bit of the pulse rate down and take a little bit of the drama out of the details, as it were. So that's the plan for this webinar. And let's move right on. Many of us have different levels of knowledge and different demands on our time, and in fact different experiences. Some of the people in the state helped develop the new course descriptions. Some people have studied them for purposes of writing curriculum. Others have no training at all, and it's just simply a matter of all things being good. Wherever we're starting, everything is an opportunity to move forward, and I hope that everyone finds something on here that will be helpful to them. And regardless of what we don't know, we're going to begin at the beginning together and do a quick review. So it's all good. Thumbs up, it's all good. So the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, the structure of them, the organization of them is that the big ideas, the 5 of them, and there are only 5 of them, are the 10,000-foot view of the arts in general, and they are the same for all 4. No, I don't. Thank you so much, Windows. Excuse me for that interruption. So the 5 big ideas are the 10,000-foot view of arts education and of the 4 arts content areas in general. They are the same no matter what content area you are involved with. And that was done very purposefully to connect the 4 content areas and also to make it easier for those who may be involved with more than one content area, and also for people who may be involved with arts integration. Enduring understandings get us closer to the instructional area, and if you join us for tomorrow's webinar, you'll see that it's the enduring understandings out of which we will draw. My colleague and I, who will be presenting tomorrow, will help you learn how to draw essential questions out of the enduring understandings. And it's those essential questions which help us tap into the very natural curiosity of our students. And as we do that, we help engage them so effectively in taking some control of their own educational learning. And it's when we involve them in the learning that we know that we've really, truly engaged them. And then the benchmarks are the measurable, the ground level view. The benchmarks for the arts Sunshine State standards are the measurable pieces. So this is the first that we've had a really strong degree of measurability. We have in the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards benchmark specificity in grades K through 5. We had those before to some degree in music and art because we had grade level expectations, which we often referenced as GLEs. Theater and dance did not have grade level expectations. So this is the first time truly for theater and dance that we have real true specificity in grades K through 5. We have the addition of cognition, aesthetics, and 21st century skills in the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards as well. We have enduring understandings for the first time, and very importantly, we have access points that were written in parallel to the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards. Those access points are written at the independent level, participatory level, and supported level for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Here's a sampling of the sequence, and even though this is a secondary presentation, I felt that it was a little bit easier to see the sequence, and this is a chart that I used in a webinar last Wednesday, and I thought it would help you since at the secondary level we have clusters of 6, 8, and 9, 12. There wasn't as much to see for this sequence, but as the writing teams worked, they recognized that it really was going to make it very difficult for arts educators if they scrambled benchmarks among the number sequence. And so they made very sure that within a big idea, and this one happens to be organizational structure, and this is the first enduring understanding. And so this is organization, which is why it's an O. And this is the first enduring understanding, therefore it's 0.1. And this is kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. You'll see that in fourth grade we have 2 benchmarks, 1 and 2, and in fifth grade we have 1 and 2. So you can see the sequence, and when I created the chart you can see that in kindergarten they simply explore the structural elements. In first grade, they identify them and use them, and they also increase to organizational principles of design, and it's to support something. They employ them in second grade to develop awareness. In third grade, they demonstrate how they're used. In fourth grade, it's broken apart so they can look now to use them as a means of understanding and to identify how they've been used to unite. And in fifth grade, they've been used to develop content, and they have to show how to organize the structural elements of art to achieve visual unity. So you can see that there's a learning sequence here, that the verbs require that they approach this particular set of skills and knowledge in increasingly more complex levels, and to do increasingly more complex tasks. So you can see that they always kept it involved in the first and second benchmarks within this big idea and enduring understanding. That allows teachers to move quickly to these benchmarks when they're looking for this particular concept. So that is an organizational piece that the writing teams made sure they covered when they were working with the organizational structure of the standards. The writer's charge, I wanted to note for you as we do a quick run-through of the standards. They were charged by the framers and by the department to write the standards, the next generation standards, with tomorrow in mind, not to how things are just now, because things, as we know, are not necessarily how we would like them. Budgets are not what we want them to be. Program offerings have been affected. There are a number of things that maybe are not exactly as we'd want them to be, but that we want technology to continue to improve, that we want continued improvements in equity and access, innovation, all of those kinds of things. They were also charged to write them with significant attention on process rather than just product. And they were charged with embedding technology throughout, even though a big idea was created to talk about technology, that they felt that technology was part and parcel of so much of what we do. Although they also pointed out many times, quite often tongue-in-cheek, that a pencil is indeed technology, and so technology was a big part of it. I mentioned access points a few minutes ago. For students with a significant cognitive disability, I wanted to give you just a quick sample, also within that big idea and that first enduring understanding, in keeping with the sequence that I showed you in the chart. Students with significant cognitive disabilities at the independent level could be asked, could be expected to explore basic structural elements of art. However, at the supported level, students should be perhaps expected to explore a variety of visual art rather than exploring basic structural elements. They would explore a variety of visual arts. At the participatory level, excuse me, at the participatory level, they could be expected to attend to a variety of visual art. And it is entirely appropriate for teachers to include these, and these are written K-12 in parallel to the full complement of Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, K-12, in all 4 content areas. And as I started to say, it is entirely appropriate for arts education classes to include, within your instruction, to include benchmarks for students in your classes at the independent level or at whatever level you have students with these particular requirements. And so if you have students included in your class, as we so often do in many of our arts classes, it's appropriate for you to include these benchmarks. And they're available online in CPOMS, and I'll show you very soon how to do that. So let's deconstruct some of this information. Let's look at the Common Core in language arts and math. And I'm giving this as a reference point. Let's start with what's more familiar to us, the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards in the Arts. Here is how we do the benchmarks. I provided a middle school benchmark ID for dance. So we have DA, and of course here is the music, MU, TH, and VA. That did not change from the previous Sunshine State Standards. 6-8, we elected to keep middle school at the cluster, so 6-8, not with a hyphen, but just plain 6-8. Big idea in this case is the 5th of the 5 big ideas. It's F, which stands for future, innovation, technology, and the future. And rather than take the I, which looked a lot like a 1, we went with F. And then it's, in this particular case, we're looking at the second enduring understanding, remembering that there are 3 enduring understandings for each of these 5 big ideas, which of course mathematically comes out to a total of 15. And then this references benchmark 7, remembering too that we could have as many benchmarks as we wanted for each EU, and they are serialized. This is a limited set. Big ideas are only 1 through 5. EUs can only be 1 through 3, but the benchmarks are serialized and unlimited. So looking here at the benchmark ID, notice that each one of the components has been separated from the others with a period. So dance, period, middle school 6-8, period, big IDF F, period, enduring understanding 2, period, and benchmark 7. So let's take a look at the ID for language arts Common Core standards. This is LA, and you'll see in a few minutes that math is used the same way, and all of the states involved with PARC, and that's an acronym PARC, all of the states that are in the PARC coalition went with this particular ID formatting. So Language Arts Common Core, and it will also be Math, MA Common Core. The grade clusters or grades change. Some of them will be 9-12, some of them individual grade levels, excuse me. And then the strands we'll look at in a few moments, the clusters, and the standards. Parallel to the art standards, when we get to this level, our term here is benchmark, and this is our measurable piece, benchmark. For the Common Core, their term at the measurable spot is standard. So please be aware that for us, benchmark is in this spot, and it is our measurable piece. For Common Core, standard is in this spot, and that's their measurable piece. So the content area is Language Arts Common Core. The grades could be numbered as they are shown here. In this case, it's 9-10. The RI refers to reading informational text. This is cluster 3, and it's of 4 possible clusters in the 9-10 strand, and it happens to be standard number 7, and it's number 7 of 10. So let's take a look at the Language Arts Common Core strands, and I'll give you just a moment to browse through there. I put the one in red, put the RF in red for a particular reason, and I'll show that to you in just a moment. So you'll see that this first list all has to do with reading in each particular case. These first 3, in general, are across the board, and then this generally is language arts, but this one, informational text, also will do some work across history and social studies and science and technical subjects. These were included because there is so much reading in history and social studies and in science and technical subjects. In green, we have the writing content area, the writing for language arts. So we have reading, writing, and then we have a strand for speaking and listening, which is has to do with conversations and has to do with presentations, as does writing to a certain extent, and then L is the use of language. So we have reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. And 2 of these areas, reading and writing, also include strands for other content areas, and that's going to be very important as we look at these. So this is a K-12 chart. Your interest levels will be here at this level, but I wanted to point out that K through 5 is grade specific, and you'll note that K5 goes all the way across these 3 content areas because these teachers tend to teach all subjects. Here at the middle and high school levels, 6th grade teachers, I should say, middle school teachers at the 6th grade level, you'll see that in 6 through 8 for history and social studies courses, those are by cluster, while in language arts, they've been divided out into grade specific. So reading literature is grade specific, 6th grade, 7th, and 8th grade. You'll notice here that foundational skills are only K through 5, and there are no benchmarks in foundational skills for middle and high school. The presumption there is that students will receive and become strong in foundational reading skills. And if you recall, a moment ago I said that I had put this in red for a reason. That's because reading foundational skills go away after the elementary level. So they only go here. There are no foundational benchmarks for reading. So clusters here, 9-10 cluster, 11-12 cluster for the literacy standards in history, social studies, science and technical, and also clustered for literary reading and for reading informational text in English language arts. So this would be textbooks and reading of that nature. Okay? And remember, if you have any questions, please go to the chat room and put your questions in at any time. It's near the end of the bottom end of your control panel. You're most welcome to put questions or comments in there, and just use them as a placekeeper, and we'll address them near the end of the presentation. That way you can have them there as a placekeeper. And I will do my best to answer them, or I will be happy to, if I need to research something, I'm happy to research them, and I will post them along with the archive of this presentation. And once you've written them into the chat room, just leave it on the default send and hit send. Let's go on and look at the writing strand. You'll notice that there are 10, and I didn't mention this in the previous one for reading, but there are 10 anchor strands for reading for college and career readiness, referred to it as the acronym CCR, and there are also 10 anchor strands in writing for college and career readiness. Let's look at the English language arts standards, which is represented by a W in their ID matter for K-12. You'll notice again that kindergarten goes all the way across for English language arts and for history, science, and technology, which is what that writing in history, science, and technology, that's what that code stands for. When we get to 6 through 12, again we have in English language arts, writing is grade specific in each of 6, 7, and 8 in the middle school, and then when we get to high school, they're clustered by 9 and 10 for writing standards in language arts, and by 11 and 12 for writing standards in language arts. In history, science, and technology, they're clustered by 6, 8 in middle school, and by 9, 10, and 11, 12. So 3 clusters within history, science, and technology for writing literacy standards. And again, if you've got questions or comments, please write into the chat room. Let's take a look at the 2 remaining strands, one of which is speaking and listening, and the other of which is language. Within speaking and listening, there are 6 anchor strands for college and career readiness, and within language, also 6 anchor strands for college and career readiness. These anchor strands more or less set the bar for what the writers of Common Core felt students needed to know and be able to do by the time they left high school in order for the writing teams for these particular strands to feel like if they knew this, then they would be ready for college, or they would be ready to go into a career, right straight into a career out of high school. So within English language arts, this is speaking and listening, represented by SL. And again, grades 6, 7, 8 are single grade level benchmark standards, and they also are here under language. And notice that there are not speaking and listening or language, particularly for history, science, or technology, that these are purely English language arts. Again, the cluster is at 9, 10 for both speaking and listening and language, and 11, 12 under both strands. So that's a very, very quick look at how these are put together. And once again, I wanted to do a quick review of how these are put together: the content area, the grade, the strand. Remember that we've got a reading strand, a writing strand, a speaking and listening strand, and language. and then the cluster and standard. And we have not looked, we've not examined the clusters or the standards. Those will come into play as you look at the courses, and my feeling was that if we took the time to look at those, we'd get awfully deep into the weeds, and we could spend probably the next 3 days just working on Common Core, and I thought maybe that was not particularly useful to you in your time. And here's just one last quick look at the language arts strands: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. Remembering also that foundational reading skills are taught grades K through 5 only. Okay, now within math, and there he goes, within math, here is some information from the front matter, or the introduction area, the front matter of the Math Common Core standards. And this is their pictorial view of how to read the grade level standards. And their information and their way of organizing their standards is a bit different from how the arts standards or the language arts standards are organized. So let's take a look at the terms they use. They use standards. Sorry, not quite what I meant to do. My apologies. There we go. They use standards. They use clusters, as meaning groups of related standards, and then domains as larger groups of related standards. So standards, clusters, and they indicated that standards from clusters may sometimes, from different clusters, may sometimes be closely related because mathematics is a connected subject. So here is a domain 3, and that's NBT, number and operations in base 10. So numbers in base 10. Here's the standard, use place value, understanding, etc. So there are 3 standards showing here. And the cluster is this heading that shows, in a sense, how all of the standards are related. Remember, it said that clusters are groups of related standards. So here is the cluster heading that shows the relationship of the 3 standards and the cluster in total and the standards that are related to one another under this heading. Okay? And that is in the front matter. Mathematical practices under the Common Core standards are emphatically presented by the Common Core writers of instruction in mathematics. And so they are, I'm just getting all kinds of messages to share with you today. So they are, these mathematical practices are intended to be used in an integrated manner as math teachers are instructing in math. And so never do math teachers, or should math teachers, teach without making these 8 practices part of the work of the classroom. But I find it very interesting as you look through the 8, when I looked at these at least, with the exception perhaps of number 4, I looked at these and they look like arts practices to me. Do we make sense of problems? We might call them challenges, and persevere in solving them? Yes, we do. Do we perhaps reason abstractly and quantitatively? Very often, yes, we do. Construct viable arguments. Construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. Yes, we do. Do we use appropriate tools strategically? Yes. Do we attend to precision? Yes, indeed. Look for and make use of structure? Yes, we have an entire big idea that talks about the structure of our content. Do we look for and express regularity and repeated reasoning? Yes, indeed we do. And so these mathematical practices are not very far from how it is that we look at our arts practices as well. So let's move on and take a look at the domains in math. And the math folks categorize these as K-8 math domains. But for today, we're going to be looking at the lower portion of this particular chart. So looking at ratios and proportional relationships, and you'll see that that's in 6th and 7th grade, but not repeated in 8th grade. The number system continues throughout all 3 grade levels, expressions and equations throughout all 3 grade levels. Functions, however, doesn't begin until 8th grade. And remember that these are domains. These are the largest of the categories. Geometry starts, if you look up here, geometry starts in kindergarten. Very interesting. It starts in kindergarten and continues throughout middle school. And statistics and probability starts in 6th grade. So that's a quick look at what middle school is doing for the domains. So there are 6 domains that are being explored and in which learning needs to occur in the math 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So let's continue and look at the high school domains. And they have domains and subdomains. So this chart is run this way. So the headers that we looked at horizontally, now you need to look. These are all high school, and they're all clustered 9 through 12. So you're looking at number and quantity and number, the real number system. And this is a hyphenated, and all of these I think are hyphenated. So it's N-RN. N- so number, real number, number quantities, number complex number, and number vector and matrix. And so do I expect any of us are going to remember all of these? No, only if we work with them. Modeling, they talk about geometry and all of its subdomains, and statistics and probability and its subdomains. So this is an informational piece, and I want to tell you that I'm going to make this entire PowerPoint available to you so that you can get to the links that will be on here. You'll see several of them later on. I want you to be able to click on the links and get to some pages and some of the pieces of information that I'm going to share with you, and also to be able to reference some of this because it's a little bit too much to take in all at once. And the archive will also be available. And before I put this online, I will tell you that the archives will be available at FAAE, which is Florida Alliance for Arts Education, FAAE.org, and you'll see that address come up near the end of the presentation. So again, remembering that mathematical practices have to be part and part of instruction when you're working with any mathematical benchmarks. So let's stop for a moment to assess where we are. We can feel pretty much on shaky ground when we're looking at Common Core in content areas that are not our own, and sometimes we feel like we can barely get in the instruction that we need to in our own content area, and how can we possibly get in the content area benchmarks in someone else? How can we possibly add reading and writing and speaking and listening and all of the other pieces when we have a performance to put on or an exhibition to mount or some of those other things. So let's take a look at just how we're going to do that. When we're doing planning and instruction, if something has to be assessed from the course description, then it makes sense that we instruct to begin with from the course description. And if something's going to be instructed from the course description, then we need to plan from the course description. And this, in many ways, changes how we teach, and it changes, in some ways, what we teach. And for years, we have perhaps taught our favorite units, and we've been able to move from favorite unit to favorite unit, or from concert to concert, or dance presentation to dance presentation, etc. In this particular age of accountability, some of our practices are going to need to change because that is where we are from a federal standpoint, and that is where we are now from a state standpoint. And I learned a lesson from one of my very most respected, phenomenal colleagues years ago. And I watched him teach. I used to love that I had, that my prep period was across from my colleagues' band rehearsals, because I could sit in, and he was a marvelous technician in a rehearsal. I just had an incredible amount of respect for him. And I used to watch him in rehearsals and learn, and then try to apply things in my own rehearsals. And near the end of the year, he would give a written exam in the terms that the students had used in their music throughout the year. They'd used them, they were familiar with them, they'd made them work. And yet, a huge number of students failed the written exam. And I had to think about that for a while, and then I realized that what they used, I suspect that if he had asked them to apply on their instruments those terms, that they could have done so successfully. But to suddenly approach it without any practice in a written form stymied them. To put it into words was an unfamiliar practice for them. And so I really had to think about the instruction related to assessment and the planning related to instruction. And their performances were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and their MPAs were phenomenal. But the instruction didn't match the assessment in this particular case, and I had to learn from it. Let's talk about what's involved in the approaching assessments. First of all, in the course descriptions, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes, almost every benchmark in the course descriptions adopted by the state, almost all of them, I would wager 85 to 95% of the benchmarks and standards in any given course description are arts benchmarks specifically. The Common Core test items, you need to be aware, are written by language arts and math specialists respectively, and they're written for language arts and math. The NGSSS in social studies, physical education, other content areas are written by content specialists in those areas as well. Likewise, arts test items are written by arts teachers in the field, just as you would expect. Test items that are being written, and they're currently under contract, the performing arts are being written through a contract to Polk County. They have over 120 arts teachers from the field who are writing their test items. Those test items will be available to teachers, schools, and districts. The contract for visual art, course descriptions for those test items is held by Miami-Dade. I will tell you that I know less about that. I've had less occasion to be involved with that. But if you have questions about it, I will be very glad to find the answers for that. But as I said, that is held by Miami-Dade, and I will be glad to get those answers for you. Test items, once they're written, will be in a test item bank. They are written to the benchmark, and they will be available to teachers, schools, and districts. And also, part of the Race to the Top grant that these teams are available, are charged with writing, is the design of an assessment blueprint. And that will be, for example, you should have a good test design would include this many questions from this big idea and enduring understanding in a given type of question. And from this enduring understanding, this many of this type of question, that many of that type of question. The performing arts teams have divided the benchmarks into 3 areas: responding, performing, which would be task-oriented, so responding, performing, and they had to kind of really work with the DOE on how to handle this one. This third area is best assessed in class, and these are items that take longer to develop than you could reasonably expect students to do in a single sitting for an assessment period, or things that are, for example, for young children, things that have to do with how does it make you feel. Those kinds of things that are really individual responses, none of which could possibly be wrong, that you would not put on a multiple response kind of question. So they're responding, but it's not the kind of thing you would put on an assessment. So there's some information about it, and in fact, districts could put together out of this item bank some questions according to the assessment blueprint. We'll be able to put together a district-wide assessment that they can use within the district, and I believe schools will also be able to do that particular kind of thing. So that's a quick look at them. Please keep in mind that the preponderance of benchmarks or standards in a course description are all arts. So let's move forward and let's look at the course descriptions. What does the Department of Education require, and how would we know? Well, we know quite simply by looking at the state-adopted course descriptions. So what does that term, state-adopted course or course description, mean at the state level? What that means is that the state, and in this case it means the Department of Education, has approved them, and the State Board of Education has also approved them. And so at the state level, that means that they have looked them over, they have approved the general description and the number of credits it's worth and the length of it, etc., and they have approved the particular benchmarks that fall under that course code and course description. That means that that course description includes those benchmarks and can reasonably expect that teachers will help their students learn and meet those particular benchmarks. So what does that mean at the district level? That means that at the district level, the districts can then distribute those to the schools and the teachers, and they are able to, they can modify the words in the course description, and I'll show that to you in just a few moments in very specific terms. It can be modified, and I'll show you the specific piece that can be modified. And they can assess the course description on the whole. They can assess a section of the benchmarks. They can assess the entire course, for example, at the end of the year. Remember that the arts fall under the heading in the Race to the Top assessment program of hard to assess. The arts, world languages, physical education, career courses. I'm trying to think. I think there's another category, but I can't remember what it is. But there are several of us. And so the district level takes those courses and moves them on to students and teachers and schools. What does that mean to students and teachers? Teachers, for example, in a course that has to do with dance repertory, a teacher may, in a particular school, may be covering the repertory of ballet. And so when it comes to that school, knowing that the course descriptions are written to some degree at the teacher level, schools and teachers may rewrite the actual paragraph, the course description paragraph, in student-friendly language that tells them that it will be ballet repertory as opposed to modern repertory, or it may be jazz as opposed to small ensemble as opposed to string chamber, or maybe whatever. So there are portions of it that can be rewritten. I'll make that very specifically clear to you. And what are the districts empowered to do in an assessment-driven world? Just as I mentioned a few moments ago, they can draw from the test item bank to do midterm district-wide exams or exams for the district at the end of the year, or schools may choose to draw from them, or teachers may choose to draw from the test item bank to do particular kinds of tests. And you can draw from them based on particular benchmarks that you would like to assess with your students. So secondary course descriptions, what's in them? Let's take a look. There is a specific course code that must always be related to that particular course, and it cannot be changed. There is some additional tracking information, also doesn't get changed. At the high school course level, what is added is credit and length of course. We'll take a look at the middle school. Length of course may also, I believe, is also there, so I was probably erroneous. I added this quickly, and I think it's also in the middle school. But credit, of course, is only a high school issue. There is a course description within the course description, so we call the overall document a course description, but then there is a paragraph, or sometimes there are two paragraphs, and this is what I'm talking about, that can be modified to fit the specifics of the course and to put it into student-friendly language. In other words, what you put into a registration document that says these are the courses that are available for you for the coming year, what would you like to take next year, you can put that into student-friendly language. And sometimes there's a special note of some sort, and we'll look at that. Big ideas, enduring understandings, related next generation sunshine, state standards, arts benchmarks. None of these can be deleted. You cannot teach less than the state adopted course description indicates, but you can add benchmarks in your lesson plans anytime you choose. If you're covering something additional, you of course can indicate that you are addressing those benchmarks, but you cannot teach less than the course indicates. And then, as we've talked, there are non-arts next generation sunshine state standard benchmarks. For example, social studies may enter into it, or you may have something from world languages or physical education, something like that. And there are, as you might imagine from this presentation, common core standards. So let's take a look at the piece. This is the course code information and tracking, and it appears at the top of every course description, K through 12. So let's take a look at the course title. This is the top segment of a course for ceramics/pottery 1. Its course number is, or course code is this, and you could expect that pottery 2 would probably be 0102310, and I would be willing to bet you that pottery 3 would be 2320 at the end. The course path, this is simply, this is like a breadcrumb trail of where it would be. If you look this up in CPOMs, which I'll show you in a few minutes, or I'll tell you about, this is that you would look for it under pre-K to 12 education courses, under 9 through 12 in adult, under visual arts, and under studio-based intensives. So it's ceramics pottery 1, it's under pre-K to 12, there's its abbreviated title, and it's worth 1 credit. It is a year-long course. And you may remember that we used to be able to cut these courses in half. We can no longer do that because assessment says this is the course description, this is what we can assess. And so we can no longer, a former bureau chief while I was at the Department of Education discovered that that was a paragraph that someone very sweetly put into the course code directory, but there was no law or rule, no statute or rule. Somebody just added it one year and said, well, that would be a nice thing, but there was no statute that said it could be done, and there was no rule from the State Board of Education that said it could be done, so it had to be taken back out. So the course length for this ceramics and pottery course is 1 year. It is a course level 2. There are 3 possible course levels, and 3 is generally reserved for honors or very upper level courses. This says it's draft state board approval pending. It's only because I took this off the Department of Education website, and the newest ones, this has actually been approved by the State Board of Education, but this was a PDF and I wasn't able to change it for you. It meets the graduation requirements for performing fine arts, which means it's the arts credit. So let's take a look. This is the course description within the course description. This is a middle school course, one of the band courses. I think this is middle school band 3, as I recall, and it has in the title, it's middle school band 3 with career planning. And the course description, you can see it says students with previous band experience expand on their technique, their music literacy, and aesthetic response through, as you might imagine, rehearsal, performance, and study of a variety of intermediate level, high quality band literature. They extend their knowledge of music notation and theory, sound production, and rehearsal strategies in tandem with their learning opportunities. And here's the and career planning. These were courses, folks, that were meant to parallel middle school band 3, and June Hinckley started doing these, and then the writing teams and I continued these this year. When sorry, hang on just a minute, I'll go back to that. When the legislature increased the middle school requirements for advancement to high school to include a full year course by the completion of 8th grade in career planning. What that meant was that at some point in middle school, students had to leave out a year of arts. Whatever arts they were involved with, they had to leave it out and go to this career planning class. And June, in all her wisdom, said, I think we can do better than that, and students should not have to give up their arts. And so she started creating courses that included and career planning. And so students could stay in band, could stay in chorus, could stay in whatever arts they were in and get this and career planning. So in tandem with their learning, blah, 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 they investigate careers in a wide variety of fields guided by the competencies required by Florida statute. And then this sometimes is in a special note, and sometimes it's here with a course description. Public performances may serve as a culmination of specific instructional goals. Students may be required to attend and or participate in rehearsals and performances outside the school day to support, extend, and assess learning in the classroom. And that particular statement, those 2 sentences, appear in all of the performing arts courses in all of the middle school and high school courses. There is a modified version of it in the elementary. The visual arts courses have a particular sentence that I believe includes something about consumption of art materials. And then there's a variety of this depending on what course they're in. This course may also require students to obtain a musical instrument, e.g. borrow, rent, or purchase. And then there is a special note here which is in any of the and career planning courses, the career and education planning course required by blah, 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 blah. And this is identical. It is statute required. And then you would find after all of the regular benchmarks for MJ Band 3, you would find the 30 competencies that are part and parcel of any of the career planning. But by addressing these as part of the MJ Band 3, then the students don't have to go to another course somewhere else in the school and bow out of band. So that's one way to keep the students in band in middle school or in any of the other courses. So I mentioned that part of the arts course descriptions include the big ideas, enduring understandings, and the arts benchmarks. So here's the beginning of a course, and you see that the big idea, critical thinking and reflection, is there in full. Here's its first enduring understanding and the second enduring understanding. And underneath it are the particular benchmarks that are used for this particular course. This is a theater course. And so you'll notice that it's not all of the benchmarks. It's only 3, 4, 6, and 7 under this particular enduring understanding. And under this one, it's 1, 4, 6, 7, 8. So 2 and 3 have been skipped, 5 has been skipped. So you see that everything is within the context when it's in this format. If you go to CPOMS, you lose this particular formatting of having the big idea and the enduring understanding. You lose the context of having the benchmark within its big idea and enduring understanding. For my money, I prefer having it within the context. It's entirely up to you. You'll also find that if you get the course description from CPOMS, that you get the benchmarks in alphabetical order. That's the prioritization is simply alphabetical. And so you may not get these in a particular order. You won't get the arts, for example, necessarily. You'll get some of the others first. And let's look at the fourth component. This is a dance, I think it's a dance history and aesthetics course. And so here are language arts, and here's one of the clusters. It's craft and structure. You have another cluster, production and distribution of writing, and research to build and present knowledge. So 3 clusters here. Here is the standard, determine the meaning of symbols, and this is within scientific and technical context. So it's an 11-12 reading and science technology. It's in a second cluster, and it's the 4th standard. Again, history, science, technology, production and distribution of writing, and produce clear and coherent writing. And again, within there, so we've got standards 4 and 5. And again, research to build and present knowledge, again, within history, science, and technology. So these would be assessed using language arts assessment test items. And these would be assessed along with the language or the arts benchmarks. Okay, so here's some places to get some information for yourselves. Most, but not quite all, most of the new state-adopted arts course descriptions are available in the format that you were seeing in pieces at this particular website. And this is one of the reasons I'm going to provide for you the PowerPoint itself. You'll also have, you and your colleagues will have access to the recording of today's webinar. The state-adopted course descriptions, all of them are also available at CPOMS, and you've heard me mention CPOMS several times. And if you click on this link, it will take you to CPOMS, and you can look at any course description that you like. And this is DOE's repository for all things to do with standards and course descriptions. And so you can go and explore this, just so you're aware, and you can download and print them out, anything you want. You can get the, you can also get the benchmarks for students with significant cognitive disabilities on here as well, and add them. You can download them, print them, whatever you like. And then all language arts and math Common Core standards in their original form, not with the identifiers, but in their original form, along with the introductions and appendices, are available at this link. This link is a little hard to find, so I wanted to be sure to provide it for you. And then just before we close, I'm starting to work on adding into a Dropbox for you to go to all of the shared, all of the state-adopted arts course descriptions in the format that I find more useful. I'm just starting to do the check across the board. This is the link, and this allows you and your colleagues to go in. It is free, it is safe, it's accessible from any computer anywhere, and it's available to all Florida arts educators. Bear with me, I am just starting to get courses ready to go in there. I do have to check first to make sure that I've got copies that have all of the appropriate benchmarks and information in them before I can dump anything in. So bear with me. I'm getting to them. You can just go in anytime you want to see if they've been updated, and I will get them in there as fast as I can. So that is for all of you. I cannot begin to tell you how critically important it is that you go online, either you go online and access this PowerPoint and do the survey, or at the end of today's presentation, when you receive in your email box, your inbox, something from Citrix GoToWebinar, you'll get a quick email saying thank you for attending. It will have a link to a SurveyMonkey, and it will take you all of about 3¼ minutes to fill out the SurveyMonkey, and it will help the Florida Alliance for Arts Education retain its funding and to send in a stellar report. And it also helps the Alliance to improve its future services to you and your colleagues. And we're very proud to be able to give you these services, but we always want to make sure that they're getting better and better over time. This was presented to you by the Florida Alliance for Arts Education, once again in collaboration with the Florida Department of Education. Plan now for summer. There is the Leadership Summit coming up, and that includes a Teaching Artist Showcase. The Leadership Summit is coming up in mid-June from the 19th to the 21st, and it's in Tampa. You can go to the FAAE.org website for more details. And here's the basic website, and you can go there and become a member today as well. There is power in membership, and the Alliance finds power in its members. If you have questions or need more information, please contact either Carol Vick or myself. We're happy to get the answers for you. And so with that, Gary, I've lost my control panel. I don't know if you can help me get it back, or if you can help me with questions.
There's actually no questions this afternoon.
Then we have brilliant people, and they've gotten it first time around. With that, I'll thank you for attending. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me on that website or on the email address that I gave to you. And with that, we'll close the webinar, and I thank you so much for being here today. Thanks, and have a good summer, a good end of the year. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.